Welcome to my library, dear guest. My name is Cole, and I will be your storyteller. Today, we once more have several stories to go over, so let us get right into it. Story number 1. The Tale of the Blank Character Sheet by the author Peach Cobblers. TLDR. After several months in a campaign, a player has a completely blank character sheet, much to our DM's chagrin. Chagrin? Hi everyone. Let me tell you a tale. The tale of the blank character sheet. This happened a few years ago, and I don't think anyone involved was really all that terrible, but it's a funny story, and I think you all might enjoy it. This was for a pre-written module, which one is not really important, and the only real character of note to the story is the Warlock. The Warlock in this campaign always seemed pretty passive to me, in that for basically the whole campaign they never used a single spell, subclass ability, pact boon, or eldritch invocation, aside from agonizing blast. In combat, they only ever used eldritch blast, but I figured that they just wanted to play their Warlock that way, and I didn't try to play their character for them. We were almost done with the campaign at a certain point after a few months. At level 7 out of 8 at the end of the campaign, and we were in a very difficult combat encounter. The Warlock said something along the lines of, "Well, I can't do anything else. I'll do Eldritch Blast," on their turn. This is where the Warlock started to fall apart a bit. In passing, I said, "You could cast a spell if you didn't want to use Eldritch Blast." There was some mumbling from the Warlock and a long pause, and they tried to cast Wall of Fire in a way that would involve friendly fire on our party. After the DM explained that, the Warlock changed the placement of Wall of Fire instead. Later in the encounter, people were making death saves, and the Warlock said on their turn something like, "I wish I could help, but all I really have is Eldritch Blast." They were playing a Celestial Warlock, and having played one before, I mentioned that they could use their first level ability to heal some of the characters that were down if they wanted to, as a bonus action. Cue some more mumbling, and then a single roll of a 1d6. Not how the ability necessarily works. And the Warlock says, "Okay, player X, you get 4 hit points, and I just used my second spell slot, so I can't use that again." The first level Celestial Warlock ability does not require the use of a spell slot. It has its own resource. And at level 7, the Warlock could have used it 7 more times. I tried to explain, without trying to be a rules lawyer, that wasn't how the ability worked, but stopped after the Warlock started ranting about how complicated keeping track of all the spells and abilities were. One of the other players tried to suggest looking at their character sheet on Roll20, where the spells were listed, and that the charactermancer can build it for them, and the Warlock got even more heated about it. The other player backed off and said, okay, that's fine, I was just suggesting it." At this point, the DM speaks up and says that they just took a look at the Warlock's character sheet on Roll20, and it is completely blank. The only thing on there is the HP and the Eldritch Blast cantrip. We are all a bit silent for a moment, and the DM steps away for a break, clearly exasperated. The rest of the session went a bit awkwardly, and we really only had 1 or 2 sessions left in the campaign. So this was kind of swept under the rug for the rest of the campaign until it was over. The Warlock was not a new player and had played D&D before. This was also not their first campaign on Roll20. I still don't really know why they didn't try to use Roll20 or ask for help with it, use D&D Beyond, some other online character sheet creator, or even a physical character sheet. But I still remember how dispirited the DM sounded when they said to the group that the Warlock's character sheet was blank. After the campaign was over, the DM did not invite the Warlock back to their next campaign. As a DM, I understood the feelings that our DM had. I just felt so bad for our DM to put the effort into running the campaign and the prep and the story for one of the players to have a completely blank character sheet and not make any attempts to learn how their class works. I don't entirely have the Warlock side of the story, but it just felt disrespectful. Anyway, it's not as bad as some of the other ones on here, and I hope that the Warlock is having fun playing D&D, or in general is doing well. They weren't a bad person at all. I liked them as a person, and I actually enjoyed playing with them most of the time. But I think at a bare minimum, you need to fill out a character sheet if you want to play D&D. This is, indeed, not as bad as other stuff we read on here. But I do wonder what happened. Not having a sheet only makes things harder for yourself more so than others. So, man, I would really like to have the Warlocks part of the story. Considering how they reacted to building a Roll20 sheet, maybe they just hate character sheets in general? But why? On another note, though, we all know that Eldritch Blast is a great cantrip, okay? It's like the poster child cantrip for Warlocks or whatever. And I see all the memes about Warlocks not doing anything else but casting Eldritch Blast. Fine, okay, y'all have your fun, but Warlocks are more than Eldritch Blast. Warlocks are such a fun and incredibly just customizable class that you can tailor to whatever you really want. Warlocks are great. And this just... that's sad. I'm sad for the player too, because there's no way they got all the enjoyment out of that character they could have had. Right? I mean, maybe they just wanted to play them like that. I'm not one... I shouldn't judge. If you all had fun, good for you. Then this ended much better than any of the other stories we have on here. Well, with that, let us move on to story number 2. DM blows 5-year friendships for titty pics. By the author RNNGWA. Oh, and as I haven't mentioned it before, the stories from here on out, the last 2, will contain NSFW topics. So proceed if you wish to. If you don't, I fully understand. There's a lot of other videos on my channel that you can watch. Players in this story. Peters, DM that asks for nudes. C, other male friend. Met this DM around 5 years ago. We became fast friends and had a lot of the same interests. Had some fun times. I also met most of my current D&D party through this game, so something good came out of it at least. Anyways, Peters had a crush on me. Asked me out, I said nah and moved on. A couple years after, he asks me for nudes. I say nah and we move on again, with me telling him it's fine that he asked. See me, a fool. He was very clearly into me, so obviously that other players in the game would make jokes about it. It was cringe, and I was very clear to him that I never reciprocated. Still, he persisted. Around this time, Peter started to get territorial. C was one of my close friends, and Peters would constantly condescend, argue with, and just generally be an asshole to him, to the point where C almost left the group because of it. Even if C was 100% right, Peters would go out of his way to prove C wrong or pull the "well, I just don't see it that way" bullshit. They argued about how elf trans worked for a week. And Peters was wrong, by the way. I had talked to Peters about this shitty attitude a few times, but nothing ever changed. It got worse when I started DMing. Peters literally nuked an entire campaign because he didn't like how the rest of the party was playing. He would, during break, take one of the players, C, into a private call and fucking rage at how everyone else was playing. Campaign after that, I split the group to figure out who the problem was, and he forcefully ended the campaign early via throwing a portable hole into a bag of holding. I could have salvaged it, but by that point it was obvious who the problem was, so I just ended it. I kicked him out of my next campaign and told him why. Now for the fun part. I ended up talking to some of my other friends who were part of his games. All female presenting, keep in mind. And we discovered that Peters asked all of us for titty pics. He would also call while drunk off his ass, something I managed to avoid by not accepting cold calls on Discord. He was also telling one of the other female players that there was nothing between him and I, while at the same time he was trying to get with me and saying shit like, "I just want to wake up next to you." True player behavior. That group convo was the why is English so hard? For us all leaving the Discord at once. It was during the convo that provoked everyone to leave at once when the husband of one of the female players was contacted by Peters with some guilt-trippy bullshit about how us leaving seemed like a coordinated effort. Husband responded with a, "Maybe if you didn't ask all your female friends for tit pics, including my wife, they wouldn't have ghosted you." Funniest shit I've ever seen. The whole thing is just so weird to me. I'd never been in a situation before where someone was so blatantly an asshole and sexually explicit and weird. It really made you think, is this actually happening? Whenever he would do something. I think that's partially the reason we let it go on for so long without saying anything. That and not wanting to rock the boat. He was the DM after all. If we pissed him off, we'd probably get kicked and not get to hang out together with our friends. Example. Constant CSA jokes about him and his dad, none of which, by his own admission, were true. How is that funny? And literally baby-talking me if I had a headache. Edit, since everyone keeps asking. CSA stands for Child Sexual Abuse. I thought it was a widely known abbreviation. I'm sorry. So yeah, I could honestly write horror story after horror story about this behavior. This is very much a TLDR post. Moral of the story? Call people out if they're being weird to your friends. Most of the time, people want to avoid rocking the boat, so they'll take abuse or creepiness instead of speaking out and suffer in silence. I have to agree, you were kind of being a fool with the whole "it's okay that you asked for nudes" thing. If somebody who wasn't my significant other asked me for titty pics, no, I do not believe that would be alright to ask. But this situation isn't exactly of your making, like, at all. This was just one very horny guy, and mixed with alcohol doesn't yield the best results. CSA jokes are a hard no. And the baby talk? Honestly, I would be this close to punching that person in the face. You're a grown woman, not a baby or a pet. I mean, I talk like that to my dog. But that's my dog. That is my baby. It's very, very different. I am curious as to how this turned out. If they actually did stay in that game or not, though it sounded like, fortunately, they left it. Oh well. To fill the void, we have one last story to go over. Story number 3. DM doesn't understand how stats work, kicks player who tries to explain them, and then starts going into detail about his recent procedure. By the author, Salami. TLDR, DM has no idea how stats in D&D work, gets offended and kicks player who explains. He then tells me about his recent circumcision, kicks a player for being annoying, and the game never even makes it to session 0. By far the most bizarre D&D encounter I've ever had in my life. This was over a year ago. I'd been in an online game which had ended due to the DM and most players moving on in their lives. Engagements, full-time jobs, promotions, etc. And no longer having time to play. I missed playing, so I took to finding a new online game. I found one with an interesting premise. This is relevant. A post-apocalyptic sort of setting. Lots of homebrew. The only remaining civilizations were those which were built high above the ground, suspended by magic, and had no direct access to the ground to keep the monsters away. The basic hook for the party were that we were a team assembled by the city to go investigate a disturbance on the surface world. I had an idea for a character, who was one of the survivors from the surface. They typically weren't allowed access to the cities due to fears they were tainted by whatever magic had corrupted the ground. I thought he could be hired by the city to meet and accompany the party on the ground, as he would be the only one with any knowledge of what they were getting into, and would provide useful information to keep them alive. Basically acting as a guide. The DM liked this idea. However, he asked me to set my character's intelligence incredibly low. While I don't mind a negative modifier, I was gonna have an 8 or 9, I forgot. This was just unplayable. However, he was new to D&D, and I realized he seemed to think intelligence scaled to the level of education you would have had. So somebody who never went to school, only learning a few things here or there from the older generations, would have an extremely low intelligence. However, there is no reason my character wouldn't know basic math, i.e. needing to divide up supplies, or how to read simple text, i.e. instructions. It was getting late for me, so I told him not to finalize my character and asked him to pick up the conversation the next day. I figured I'd explain then. A similar thing happened with another player and a different stat, I think strength. But when she tried to properly explain, he got fed up and banned her for trying to make a game-breaking character. When I saw that she'd been kicked from the server for that reason, I assumed she was trying to make an OP Mary Sue I'm the main character type build. Character creation was done in private messages. I only found out later when she messaged me. The following evening, me and DM get back into call. Before we get back to stat talk, I mentioned how I might have been getting dental surgery soon, and I would miss a session. He then began to talk about his own recent surgery in all the gross detail. The infection, the pain, what it looked like, how he didn't rest properly after and injured it again. You get the idea. I never did get to explain stats to him as I was so disgusted I left the call, left the server, and blocked him. From what I know, he kicked another player for being annoying the next day, and I believe the rest shortly after. Also, he was stupid enough to make his Discord the same as his personal socials, which I discovered looking him up out of curiosity after, purely to see who the hell this guy was. He wears a fedora and has a neckbeard. Don't know what else I expected, to be honest. That last part sounds almost too perfect, but let us get back to before that. So, my character is the only one to really have knowledge of this new world that we're entering, and will provide the others with information. Great, and will be your dump stat. Were you listening to me? Seriously, in what world would this work? If you're an informant of any kind, or act as guide, I feel like there's a certain amount of intelligence to go along with it. Unless the DM thought it's just wisdom, I don't know. I suppose that could work, but also, you don't get to tell your players what stats they should be dumping. If I want to make a fighter with minus constitution and strength, then goddammit, I will do it. I mean, sure, you should advise your players, you know, especially the new ones who might not know what stats you need for which class, but that's a wholly different thing, right? Oh well. I don't want to get into the surgery stuff. That is gross. That is all I believe I need to say. With all the stories told, let us move on to the next segment. The Exhibition Journal, where I display the fan art you make for this channel. Today's fan art is... Oh no!
What if cat girls were real?
Because like, you know, we assume that they're just like people that, you know, have cat-like tendencies, but what if they're cats with a couple people-like tendencies?
Make it even weirder. Just imagine you have cats, but they have ears of a human and the ass of a human.
They're cats, but with like human hands, so they get thumbs, but they're still furry.
That would I'm just imagining what that would look like, and oh my god, I should not have done that. That's just an affront to God.
What a wonderful and not at all horrifying depiction. Okay, real talk. Oni is another incredibly talented artist, and I mean, you can totally see it. The picture looks amazing. It's just... Yeah, I can put my finger on it, alright? Either way, though, thank you so much for your fan art, Oni. Their socials are on screen and linked in the description. Follow them, they make amazing stuff. In the description, you will also find the link to my Discord, where you can submit your own fan art if you so desire. Or, if you do not have a Discord, send it to my email linked in my About section. that is it for today's stories. I hope you enjoyed your stay and that I will see you again soon. For there are always more stories to be shared.